Economic coordination and the business cycle. A free market is a pattern of voluntary interpersonal exchanges. Free market firms, in pursuit of profits, produce goods and services that satisfy consumer desires as efficiently as possible given the supply conditions. The market process is how the structure of production, the way land, labour and capital is used, is rearranged in response to changing supply and demand conditions. The market process is coordinated by prices and profit and loss signals. Prices are formed by supply and demand. If supply of a good is low, or if it is highly demanded, the price will be high. If a good is in high supply, or there is low demand, the price will be low. Changes in the price reflect changes to the supply and demand conditions. Production is coordinated by entrepreneurs and businesses seeking profits and responding to profit and loss signals. There is no need for a central planner to coordinate production. The profit-loss mechanism of the market ensures that businesses best satisfying consumer desires, those using resources efficiently, are rewarded, and businesses failing to satisfy consumer desires, those wasting resources, suffer losses and bankruptcy. Let's look at how changes to the supply and demand conditions lead to an appropriate change to the structure of production. Suppose demand for a good increases, or supply decreases. Then we would say that more production of that good is needed. This change to supply and demand conditions means that firms are able to charge a higher price. This will bring them higher profits. Guided by the profit signal, existing firms will shift more resources into the production of that good, and new firms will enter the market. The overall effect is that the structure of production is rearranged to increase production of that good, exactly as desired. Conversely, suppose demand for a good falls or supply increases. Then we would say that less production of that good is needed, so that resources can be freed up for use elsewhere. In this situation, firms must lower prices to remain competitive. This will cut down their profits or may result in losses. Guided by this signal, existing firms decrease production of that good, and some may go bankrupt. The overall effect is that the structure of production is rearranged to decrease production of that good, exactly as desired. This market process is what allows economic coordination. The structure of production is arranged to optimize the production of goods that consumers desire. When governments intervene in markets, production becomes uncoordinated and resources are wasted from the consumer's point of view. Any artificial stimulus or restriction of demand will distort prices so they no longer reflect real consumer desires. Any artificial stimulus or restriction of supply will distort prices so they no longer reflect real supplies of resources. Price controls and product controls disrupt the profit and loss signals that guide businessmen. Bailouts keep resources in the control of firms who are using them inefficiently. Complete government control, socialism, renders economic coordination impossible. So why do economies suffer business cycles? Most economists tell us that the business cycle is a fundamental feature of a market economy. They argue for government intervention in the form of fiscal and/or monetary policy to lessen the effect of the business cycle. Economists of the Austrian school, like Ludwig von Mises, argue that the business cycle is a failure of economic coordination, which has occurred because of a government intervention. That intervention is the distortion of interest rates that occurs when new money is created by a central bank. With a free market interest rate, the business cycle would not occur. Austrians further point out that after a boom and a bust, there is nothing government can do to help the economy to recover. They can only worsen recessions by intervening further. To understand the Austrian theory of the business cycle, we must first understand what the interest rate represents and the role that it plays in economic coordination. The interest rate is the price of borrowing money. Like all prices, interest rates are determined by supply and demand. In this case, the demand for loans and the supply of money available to be loaned, savings. As we have seen, low supply or high demand will lead to a higher price. So if society is comprised mainly of individuals who live for the present, with little concern for the future, then the supply of money to be loaned will be low, and the demand for loans will be high. So the price of loans, the interest rate, will be high. Conversely, if a society is comprised mainly of individuals who save their money for use in the future, rather than spending it on present consumption, the supply of money to be loaned will be high, and the demand for loans will be low. So the interest rate will be low. In this way, interest rates coordinate the time structure of production. That is, whether resources are used more in short-term production projects to satisfy consumers' desires for goods now, or they are used more in long-term production projects to satisfy consumers' desires for more goods in the future. Government manipulation of the interest rate necessarily results in a malinvestment boom. When a central bank inflates the money supply, the interest rate price signal is distorted. This causes the time structure of production to become distorted. With an interest rate lower than the free market rate due to government manipulation, the amount of savings available for loans appears to be higher than it really is. It appears as though people are saving for the future, when in fact they want to consume now. Businessmen are misled into starting more and different, especially long-term production projects, believing they will be profitable. There is an artificial boom, especially in capital goods industries. This boom is artificial because it is a result of malinvestments of resources in unsustainable projects. Busts and recessions inevitably follow artificial booms. During an artificial boom, the malinvestments caused by the distorted interest rate are unseen. They appear to be profitable businesses. The bigger and longer the boom, the more malinvestments occur. A malinvestment boom is unsustainable because resources are scarce. There is only so much land, labour and capital available for use in production projects and business ventures. So inevitably there will be a bust, at which time the malinvestments become apparent through bursting price bubbles, job cuts, foreclosures and bankruptcies. A recession is the recovery period following artificial booms and busts. It is the market process, reallocating the malinvested resources to where they can be used to satisfy consumers' real preferences. The recession recovery can only be slowed down and made more severe by government interference, since the market process requires free market prices. More government interventions, such as bailouts, stimulus packages, nationalisations and regulations, hamper the recovery by maintaining or introducing new price distortions. If the government wants to help the economy recover, it should reduce the amount of interventions it currently makes. It could eliminate or reduce taxes and regulations. It could eliminate price controls like the minimum wage. Most importantly, it must stop inflating the money supply and allow interest rates to rise to their market level. Keeping interest rates low will only delay the recovery, and by creating even more malinvestments, it will lead to an even bigger bust at some point in the future. Hyperinflation is when the money supply is increased so much that the value of the money rapidly decreases, until it is almost worthless. There are many examples of hyperinflation in recent history. At this point, economic coordination has broken down completely, and the division of labour collapses. The curious task of economics is to demonstrate to men how little they really know about what they imagine they can design. Central planners lack the knowledge necessary to coordinate an economy. That knowledge can only be discovered through the market process.